How can you help me out with this one? Sorry. This is the pop-up, right? Yeah. This one's good, right? This is the one, no?
Yeah, is it detected? Like the external stuff.
I think so. Or is it this one? Okay. Oh, I think it's this one. Oh, oh, sorry. Thanks. I think it's this one. Yeah, I remember it was shorter last night. Okay. Yeah, I said. Verify that this one. Oh, yeah, it's with. Oh, really? Okay. Trick the stream for me. Okay. Sean, do you want this? How do you? Yeah, I'll get you started. All right, let's get started. All right, you guys, let's get started with this. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful, not so sunny Friday. So today we're doing Next.js with Vercel, of course, and this is going to be a fun little workshop. We have some exciting code for you to show. So we're going to be building a little app together. First, we're going to talk about Next.js a little bit, how it works, why it matters, why we're using this, how can it help you with your projects. Then we're going to build a little application to just, showcase how it works. And then we're going to work on the application that our team made for you, which is a little quiz app. It's very simple, so it's pretty straightforward, but we'll actually discover a little bit more about Vercel there, how to link a database to it, how to deploy it very easily, and how to get it for the people to see finally what you built. So this is an introduction, so all of you guys who are Next.js gurus hopefully will not be bored. But still, we'll be covering some basic stuff and at the same time some exciting stuff since we're going to be using, again, if you're a Next.js Pro, you know that there is the app versus pages routing. So we're going to be using the new routing. So if you're not used to that, also a good way for you to kind of learn about that. So let's start by first understanding what Next.js is, and let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what we're building here today. So this is the very simple little application here that is going to be the result of our meeting today. So we have available quizzes here. It's a list, right? Then we have a button, create new. We can specify the title. We can specify the questions, whatever we want them to be, and we can specify the correct option. So one of these options will be the correct one, right? If we wanted to add a question, we can add one more, and then we can just create a quiz, and it's going to load for a little bit, and it's going to pop up here. So if we want to take a quiz, we can start it here. It will redirect us to the new screen where we can select the right option, submit, and we're going to see if we scored correct. And it's going to throw us away, right? So we have one chance in this. It's very hardcore. Let's see. Is it DF, DF, or DF? I'll go for DF. Yay! Okay, nice. So yeah, this is the result of what we're making today. But before I introduce you to this, let's talk a little bit about Next.js. So, who in this classroom has ever worked with Next in their lives? Nice. Who has ever worked with React? React Web. Nice. Okay. I'm glad we're not dominating on people who work with it, so I can be comfortable with my intro stuff. So Next.js is a React framework, right? It's a very good way to build fast, reliable web applications. So whenever you need a landing page, whenever you need a blog page, anything more complex even, use Next always to easily deploy, easily build, and easily maintain your application. It's kind of nice, and the way it's built is nice because if you already know HTML, which I assume a lot of you do know, and CSS, it's kind of easy for you to get into it. Like it's not drastically different, I would say, because it's using React framework and components, and React is trying to stay really close to the essence of HTML and CSS web coding. Yet it still allows you to reuse components, do a lot more than you would usually do with your basic CSS and HTML and JS. So, did I hear React? Yes, you did. So yeah, React is very simple, very straightforward JavaScript library. We all love JavaScript here, but we love TypeScript even more because we love types. And it's component-based approach. What is a component? So whenever you have a button in HTML and you want to have another button, you copy the whole, like, probably 10 lines of code with the whole classes and everything to just make another button. If you have a component, it's like a class that already has everything predefined in it, right? It's like a little template of code which you can just, paste again. For example, this here, let's see, for example, the football, baseball, basketball, they all are having the same format basically, right? They have the row, a little spacing there, text on the left, price on the right. So instead of copying and pasting that, you can just say that it's an element called sporting good or like sport, for example, and you can just have three of the same. This is all components, right? This is how components work. So it's all about reusability. It's all about easily readable code, easily maintainable code, and modular code. So if you have this component, it's way easier to go inside that sport component and change something there to, like, for example, change the color to red on all of them instead of just changing, three, or if you have 20, or if you have 30, right? Those chunks of code. So this is the basic of React. Like, let it be easily usable, easily maintainable, and made out of components. So if you have never used React, don't be afraid. It's okay. We're gonna again cover the basics today. I just want to show you why we're talking about Next here and not React today. First of all, we did have a React workshop like a couple of semesters ago, but this is a good refresher. So I just wanted to show why Next is so cool. Like, you have actually definitely seen a couple of websites built in Next already in your lives. So they have, first of all, very nice websites for their own products, right? So this is the web framework for when it matters. It's number one React framework, 14th largest GitHub, a lot of stars. But here, this is the interesting part, right? This is where they show what they have um, built, the companies have built with Next. And you can see some familiar names here, big names actually, United, DoorDash, HBO Max. So, and you see that they're all very different, right? There's like Spotify, your favorite web player, is also built in Next. But then you have DoorDash, completely different scenario, right? Like it's for food ordering. This is audio streaming. HBO Max is video streaming, very important for the framework to be good for that, right? United Airlines booking, a lot of connectability stuff that you can book in time, that it's not going to error out on you because you're paying big money for the tickets, right? You have Netflix jobs. You have Claude AI, by the way, really good AI. If you have never tried it, try it. It's really good at code generation. TikTok web app, if anyone uses that, right? Hulu, Notion even. So a lot of very popular applications, a lot of companies like, OpenAI, Twitch, IMDb, Spotify, they use this. So you see it every day. And the good thing about Next is that just like React web apps, it's pretty much indistinguishable from your normal web page. So you would not like know for sure that this is Next, which I think is very important because if you're talking about something like Flutter Web, for example, there is always ways to see where it's like, improperly rendering or like it just shows that it's not your native web application. It can be annoying sometimes. So the good thing about Next, if you see a Next app, you probably have never even thought about like what is Spotify built in, like the web one. But yeah, you see it's like indistinguishable from other websites. So that's a very good thing. So these are some examples, right? And basically, Next.js is an interesting framework because no one can really tell you right off the bat like what it does, why is it good, why is it better than React, except for like I just use Next.js because I like it, right? And no one is to blame for that. It's really good. But for you to understand why we're talking about Next, I just want to mention a couple of things about like why it matters, right? So even though it's heavily based on React, so if you know React, you're definitely going to be comfortable with Next. And if you don't know React, it's a really good way for you to learn React instead of just learning React. Because again, the problem with React, if you've never worked with it, it's very unstructured, right? It's very based on dependencies. Like you want to have, I don't know, something more, a little bit more than out of the box. Like for example, I don't know, Blur, right? You need a library for that. Or like you need navigation, such simple thing as navigation, you need a library for that. And all of those libraries are third party. So some are maintained by Facebook, who owns React, funds React, and some are built by other people that you can just find on npm. It becomes a little unsafe, it becomes a little cluttered. So the main issue that I see with React is people generally don't have like a structure that is set for projects. Like people just, whenever you're going to be on an internship or something and they'll be using React, you will most probably see something different from what you see on GitHub in terms of like how they structure the projects. It's like, where, for example, the files are like structured, like where is the folder with pages, where is the folder with state management stuff, how do they locate that, right? Every developer has their own team lead usually who starts the project. They have their own like thoughts on that, and it's usually very unstructured. So the good thing about Next is that they have rules. They have predefined stuff that they want you to follow. So genuinely, when you see like a Next app, it's pretty much similar to one another in terms of, for example, folder structure, how they structure requests, how they structure their components. It's very structured and it's easy to get into it because, again, you find anything on GitHub, just search up Next.js. You're probably, if you go with that code structure, you're going to be good to even like build your own project and deploy it because generally speaking, if you have read Next.js documentation, you're good to go. Most of the people use that. So yes, it does use React to build the UI, what the user sees, but it has a lot of additional features that come out of the box that are very handy, and we're going to be using a lot of them today, such as data fetching, more on that later, routing, so the navigation that I mentioned, right? React doesn't have that out of the box, like nothing concrete, like there is a lot of options you can choose from, but Next comes with a really good router that we'll be using today too. There's rendering stuff like, custom graphics and things like that. And also the server stuff, which is really great. This is where Vercel, the company that owns Next.js, again, sponsors Next.js. So they don't own it, they just have it because it's an open source framework. So any one of you can contribute, which is really good. They provide a lot of things. They're basically work like Firebase, just a little glorified Firebase, I would say. And they provide you with things like automated deployments, CMS, authentication, databases, like a lot of useful stuff that you might want to use in your app right away, and you don't want to spend a day on setting up AWS and learning all of that stuff. So we'll be using that a little bit too today. Now, there's like a little bit more to discuss here. I don't want to bore you with this, just to mention why, again, Next.js matters. There's server-side rendering and client-side rendering. It's worth mentioning because you're probably going to see it if you explore it more. Just a little bit of boredom here, right? It's very interesting, actually. You know how you have your front-end code, right? And it just runs on the front end, and then you have your back end usually that gives you the data. Usually like JSON, like on have the posts. Remember our, if you have been at our API workshop, right? There is an API, it gives you some data, like a JSON, then you parse that and you display like blocks of content on the front end, generally, right? Now, server-side rendering, which is SSR, is different because there you just send the code. You just send the front-end code straight to the front end and it just renders it. Why is that good? Well, first of all, you don't need to parse anything. You don't even need to like get a request and parse it into, objects or whatever you want it to be, data transfer objects, and then show that, for example, like the post, right? If there is a blog, usually you would fetch the posts, then have them processed somehow to match your whatever you're using, for example, React again, right? You match them, you say post date, post title, post author, blah, blah, blah. Then you create a layout with it. You say like a little for loop, right? If we have 10 posts, we're going to make blocks for all of them. Here, you don't do any of that. You just literally generate that all in the back end. You send it to the front end. Is it good? For you to decide. I frankly don't find it useful for like your applications that you just build on a daily basis. I know that a lot of heavily content-based applications use that. For example, Netflix. You know that Netflix, whenever you enter, it's like a new thing. Like it's just like a generally layout is there, but the content is always different. So, and sometimes they even move blocks. Like maybe you don't notice it, but even Spotify on their homepage, they move blocks sometimes. Like they show some, they don't show some appear before, later. You can't do that really without like updating the app, right? Like if it's Spotify or Netflix, you have to update the app to get those changes. Now, the good thing about client server side is that you can change your whole UI and it's still gonna look good because again, all your phone is doing is rendering it, right? It's only rendering the content that you have in the backend. So that's great, right? Because you don't really need to ship updates. If something breaks, you just fix it on the backend. So Next.js is very popular for heavily supporting this approach. Again, server side versus client side rendering. Oops. If you want to look into it, it's a good thing because if you want to ever work for a company that does this kind of stuff, they're going to ask you about it probably. It's heavily covered in the docs. I just had to mention it because I think it's an interesting case. So yeah, if you're interested in this, definitely take a look. It's a good concept, right? You don't need to redeploy all the time. You can just fix bugs easily, but you are kind of building your front end code on the back end, which is, yeah, whatever suits you, right? You're the developer. So let's talk a little bit about how we can test this out, right? It's very easy. Now, the only prerequisite here is that you have Node installed. If you guys don't have Node installed, then you'll go to Google, type in Node, not Node, Node. And first one is Node.js. It's a very good thing to have installed on your computers. I think you all do have that, but if you don't, here's how you do it. You just download the latest version here and install it using the installer. If you're on Mac, on Windows, same thing, right? It will guide you through it. I'm not going to cover it here because I think everyone already has Node installed. If you don't, then just go to the website and install it now because we're going to start slow. Uh, Node is the only prerequisite here, right? Because Node allows you to run basically JavaScript code easily on your computer. So we're going to be running our app as a big like JavaScript app, right? Even though we're going to be using TypeScript because this is the new standard. Um, it's very simple to actually get started with this. So you have this code here that I'm showing. This is npx create next app at latest. Now, what is npx? npx is a very interesting and useful command that maybe some of you don't know about. So you know how we have npm, right? Node package manager, right? It's very easy to just run npm install, npm init to create your Node application. If you've never worked with it, it's fine. You'll see it definitely throughout your career somewhere. Now, npx is very interesting because npx allows us to run anything that you have installed with npm. So any package, for example, Firebase, you can run it directly. And if it's runnable directly, you can run it with npx. This is the kind of stuff that you use in the CLI, right? For example, Firebase CLI, instead of actually installing it and mapping it to your computer path directory and like the bin folder for the terminal to know that it's there, you can just use npx. It's very useful in case you want to run something fast, but you don't want to install a whole bunch of dependencies. You just run npm install and then this one. So let's try creating this app here, right? I'm gonna switch the scene for the dear YouTube people. So what we're gonna do here, we're literally gonna go to the terminal. I'm gonna cd. I hope you can see this. I hope we'll cd into documents. Just pick your directory. I'm gonna make a directory called next test app. I'm gonna cd into this directory, basic Unix commands. You can do it with UI if you want. So now we're in this directory, and now we need to run this command here, right? npx create next app at latest. Let's see what it does. It's gonna ask us a bunch of questions now, right? So what is the project name? Let's call it the same as we called the folder. So it's next test app. Is it going to use TypeScript? Yes, it's going to use TypeScript. Again, TypeScript is like JavaScript, but it has types. That's literally the name. It's that simple. I encourage you very strongly to use TypeScript in your life because it's just so much better. Like if you want to ever use some package and you have no idea what their code looks like and you don't want to go into your node modules, inspect how they call stuff, just use TypeScript because it's so much easier. You hover over it in VS Code, it shows you everything. It shows you all the types. You'll never have an issue where it's like, the classic JavaScript stuff, like, this is a string and then we make it an integer and then we make it a Boolean and what is it going to be in the end? You never know. So here you just type it, you say if this is a Boolean, it's going to be Boolean forever. It's very nice. So we're going to be using TypeScript. Are we going to use ESLint? No, because I hate ESLint. And you can see that they do too because they already pre-written it as no here, pre-selected. ESLint is a linter. Linter allows you to kind of restrict the formatting, basically, make rules for formatting of your files, which is a good thing. You should format your files. They should look nice for the other coders to see and be jealous. But we don't need this right now because it's just going to tell us to, oh, you cannot run because you have the comma missing on line 176 in this file, and then we're going to be stuck here forever. So we're not going to be using that today. Are we going to use Tailwind CSS? Yes. ASU CSS, familiar word, very nice. Tailwind is just another way to write CSS among the other hundreds of ways to write CSS, and everyone has their own favorite. But I recommend Tailwind for this, and you'll see why. It has a couple of cool perks. Would you like to use source directory? Yes. Would you like to use app router? Now, this is what I was talking about for you gurus, 3 gurus in the room. There are multiple ways of doing routing in Next.js, and they did like a little change recently. I think it was like a year or two ago. And now they use a special thing called app router. Since we're learning this right now, we're going to use this. And you see it's recommended as by default. If you've never used it before, it's okay, you'll catch up. It's very simple, actually. It's just folder structure. So we're going to be using app router. And do we want to use the custom default, whatever? Yes, that's just for imports. And now it's going to generate a bunch of things for you, right? So the good thing about this npx is that uh, it runs everything for you already. By the way, if you had any error when you were running this, you can just npm install that package called create node app or whatever it's called, create a next app. You can try npm install that app and then run it. Because again, we're calling like a package. This is a package that allows us to generate code. So here in the slide, I also had all of the options selected for you. So if you'll be reading this after, you can also select the same. But as you can see, we've basically selected all the defaults. So it says that we created an app here, right? So where's the app? Not here because I didn't open it, but let me actually open it here in VS Code. You can open it in any of your preferred IDEs. I'll be opening it here. So let's see what we got generated here. And we have a bunch of files. Okay, so let's get acquainted with this. So far you can see the package.json, package log.json. This is right away, right off the bat, shows us that this is going to be JavaScript, right? We have all the basic stuff here. This doesn't need much introduction, right? We have name, version, private. This is for you to describe what your app does. This is your little config, right? The scripts part is very interesting. A lot of people ignore it when they start learning Node or, any of the Node-related stuff. We're going to talk about it in a second. And then we have dependencies. Let's see what it actually pre-installed for us. So React, React DOM, and Next. That's it. That's all we need. So it's using React, it's using the rendering, and it's using Next. It just preloads them for you. And then we have a bunch of different dev dependencies, which are Node, React, auto prefix or whatever, post CSS is needed for Tailwind, TypeScript. So it's not actually a lot. So you see it already kind of pre-builds it for you instead of you having to install React, instead of you having to install Tailwind, everything else, right? It's just already has all the scripts for you, already have everything pre-written. So that's kind of nice. That's nice to have, right? Next, I'm actually going to go back to the slides here so we can read this. So yeah, we have project structure. This is the same as we have right now on our screens, right? By the way, if you have any issues so far, we have technical officers there, so just raise your hand. They're going to help you. But again, everything is going to be available online. You can do it after the lecture. I hate calling this a lecture. This is a workshop. You have lectures at ASU that you pay for. This is better. So project structure has a couple of folders, and you see that I stole this image from Next.js, which already proves that we do have some predefined structure that we need to follow. Now, going back to this is we have public here, and public is very simple. It's your assets. This is what the people will see, right? This is a little SVG here. Let's preview it. What is it? Next.js, right? This is you'll see where it's used later once we launch the app. But yeah, you see it has Next, it has Vercel here, again, little logo. This is what the people will see from your app. As you can see, it's very convenient because even Node modules us here. They even ran npm install for us. Beautiful. So we are like ready to go. This is it. We can launch the app right now. I just want to show you around a little bit. All right, so we have a bunch of other configs here. This is tsconfig. Very hard to understand whatever is happening here. Whenever anything breaks in TypeScript, it's usually this. It's usually something related to this thing. Just don't Stack Overflow, fix it. It's fine. This is already pre-built for us, so that should be all good. Usually we're not touching this until something breaks. Tailwind CSS is the config for Tailwind. Don't get scared about this. This is very easy. I'm gonna show it to you later. Just nothing to look at right now. It'll read me for you to explain how to run the app, which we'll do in a second, and a bunch of other configs that we don't need to look at right now. So we're interested in the source folder. I hope you guys can see this. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. So source folder, what do we have here? Our little icon, nice. Our global CSS, where we have the CSS defined, familiar CSS stuff here. We're gonna look at it in a bit. Layout.tsx, notice the file format, tsx, this is what React uses. You can see the little icon there. tsx, right? And then page.tsx. And a lot of stuff here, actually. So without further ado, let's just hit it. Let's just launch it. What do we do for this? So we're already in this test folder, right? Let's run npm. What are we going to do now? We need to launch this somehow. Let's go cr package.json. Now, this is very important. Whenever you download anything from GitHub and you just want to test it out, go directly to package.json. If you don't know how to launch it, what it uses, what are like dependencies, if the developer was good and kind enough to provide the scripts, just follow the scripts. They're very useful. How does it work? So we have defined scripts here, dev, build, start, lint. What is this? This is the stuff that you would run in your terminal. This is a command. This is already a written script, right? As it says in the name. Let's try running next dev. Next not found. Now, what is next? Next is a dependency, literally called here next. What did I tell you about running dependencies? We can use npx, right? Is this going to work? npx next dev. Yes, it is going to work, and it's going to launch the app for us. It's already running somewhere there. Why do we have the scripts? Because with the scripts, you don't need to care about running npx, finding the dependency, doing anything. You just hit npm, always say run. Run means you're running a script, and then the script name, dev. npm run dev even explains to you what it runs. Next dev, same thing, right? We'll also have it online and working. What did it generate for us? Let's see. Running on localhost 3000. Pretty page. Really nice page here. Okay, so what do we have here? A couple of elements, a couple of links, nice animations, looking nice. Let's see if it's responsive. Is it? Hopefully it is. Yeah, pretty responsive, I'd say. Yeah, not on this size. Yeah, this is pretty nice, right? So even a little animation with the arrow and little background, nice to have, right? So this is all that was generated by us for us by that command that we ran, right? And as you can see, this is live, so it supports live rebuilds. So whenever you change anything, it's just going to rebuild the page for you automatically. Again, very nice. Now let's go a little bit back to basics because there is a lot of code they generated for us. I just want to, again, show you around how this works. This is node scripts for you when you're going to be looking at this presentation later, just to have you make a little refresher for you. Now the root layout. This is us starting to talk about the layout. So you see, I have stolen another image from their documentation, which by the way is really good. Highly recommend the documentation. Beautiful. So far, my favorite, probably favorite docs for any framework, web, mobile, whatever. They're very, very good with them. So whenever you're stuck, just go there, check it out. Really good stuff. So is this familiar? App layout page. We already have that, right? They generated it for us. Now, what is that little thing in? Arrow to slash. It means that this app thing that we have going on here, right? The layout.tsx and page.tsx presents to us the root page of the application. It's like if you had index.html, right? You run index.html, you don't have to say that it's index.html. It knows. The browser knows, so you just can put a slash. Same thing with us here. Let's go out. Let's go here. Do we have anything here going on except for the local host? No, nothing. Just localhost, right? So we don't say index. We don't say layout. It just runs. So this is how the folder structure works, right? And we're going to be adding up to this later. So our root layout, and it's, if you go here, is going to be the same, pretty much as the one shown in the slides. So root layout is very simple. You don't need to change anything here. Root layout is your wrapper. It shows you what the whole application page will be wrapped around with, right? So familiar tags here, right? HTML and body. We use that all the time. We use doc type HTML and then we start building our page. Very useful. So we use the same thing here. It's the same web page. And if we go back to our application running here, let's inspect it. Let's see what we have here. We have HTML, and then we have body here, right? Just a bunch of interesting stuff going on inside this, but yeah, apart from that, it is a basic HTML app, right? So this is what it does. It creates the wrapper for you that is HTML, and it tells the page, this is HTML. You know this stuff. But inside of it, up to us. We define it. So how does it work here? We have some metadata here for SEO, right? For example, when you Google it, it's going to show up title, description, whatever you want to put there. Very important. A lot of frameworks don't have that. For example, Flutter Web doesn't have that. You could define the fonts. We're using Inter from Google Fonts. Good font. And here is our root layout. Now, this is what application is going to call once it launches. So once we open the page, it's going to call this root layout, and it will be like, what do you want me to show? What is it that I am showing to the user? And the app goes like, yeah, here's your HTML, familiar, right? Here's your body tag, familiar, right? It's like, yeah, nice, you can go, absolutely. I'm letting you to present this content to the user. Now, what is inside of that? That is completely up to us, and this is where we start coding our layout. But this is just a good intro where you can also predefine stuff like fonts, metadata, you know, define your global CSS, like your CSS code, also for the styles. Just a really good entry point into the application. It's very clear, right? What we're doing here. Now, children, let's see where it's coming from. It's coming from the root layout. So children is everything that is going to be coming into this and being placed inside the body, right? I hope that's kind of clear. We're not going to do anything about this. We're just going to leave it as it is. No changes needed. Now, the page is always, think of it as index.html, right? Index.html is your page.tsx. This is what the code goes to once it figures out that this is an HTML page. What are the children? This is a child right here, right? So you can see familiar HTML code, right? Let's see how we return it first of all. Is this JS? Yes, this is JS. You're exporting a default function. So basically, if you're confused with export default, it's just a function, and you can export it later. I can just, you know, say it here, export default home, like this. This works too. This is going to work. Now, this is just a defined function. This is how you define a function. Like, for example, if I wanted to return 3 here, it will return 3. It doesn't matter what it returns. But we wanted to return some code. Why do we do it like this? Because we need to make some modifications to the code, right? We want it to be cooler than basic HTML. And in the end, as you can see, we are returning this little bracket here, which is React notation. And instead of setting HTML as a string, we can just work with HTML and our IDE is going to recognize it. So we have a bunch of tags here, right? We have a bunch of class name, and then inside of it, a lot of text. This is part of React. This is part of, you know, stuff when you grow out of just describing your styles and styles.css. This is what you go to basically, right? So this is your predefined stuff that is usually depending on what you use. It's Bootstrap, or here we're using Tailwind. It's your predefined classes that already are pre-built for you, so you don't have to go and say, you know, if I want to display flex, go display column flex, then define some more flex stuff. We don't need to do that. We can just say class name, and inside we already have predefined flex. We have minimum height. We have flex to be a column, so it goes like this and not like this, right? Not a row. We center the items. We justify between items. So this is the content justification. So we make them as far as possible from each other. And P is padding. This is the simplest one. 24. So on all sides, padding is going to be 24. This is very confusing. You need to learn this. There is a lot of documentation on this. You can just Google it. At some point, it will become intuitive. Definitely easier than just creating classes from scratch for CSS. Just get used to it, honestly. A lot of frameworks use this, so this is a good notation. We're not going to be covering this a lot. It's just all already built for us. So, you know, the basic stuff like margin being M, then dash, then value, and padding being P, then dash, then value is good to know always. But apart from that, it's pretty easy to understand, right? So we also see this little image tag here, right? This is, where is this used? This is probably the, oh, it's 3 now. Look at that. See, it was 3. So now we are sending HTML code, and this is our next, and this is our Vercel icon. So we're using image here, and you know that HTML tag does not go like this. It goes like img. We're not using img here. We're using image. Why? Because it's a React component, that we're importing. You see there is React here. And we can safely, since it's a TSX file, not HTML, not JS, we can safely use those. There are not a lot of them because React encourages you to build your own and not to use theirs. But they have some basic stuff like images, links, and whatnot. So it's very similar to just defining as IMG. Just has a little bit more flexibility that you can define. You can, by the way, look at all the attributes like here. There are a lot of them, way more than in HTML. So even like a loader, you can even specify an image that will pop up while the image is loading, or specify the quality so it loads faster. So pretty convenient. And as you can see, we're using that too. But apart from that, just your basic HTML, right? Nothing new here. If you know how to write HTML, you know what's up. If you don't know how to write it, ask ChatGPT to write it for you. There is nothing shameful in that. It's HTML. Who cares? All right, so this is our first page. This is our little application here. No routes, no nothing, just simple little app, just for you to get acquainted with it. Right, so we learned that root layout is the wrapper that shows that this is an HTML page. We learned that the page.tsx is where we show the content, and you see here I made a little example, which is the export default function page. Again, export default means that this is the first function that will pop up once you open the file, right? If it's a file called .js and you have a bunch of functions there, if you export default, that is going to be the entry point. Like you just define that this is going to be the one that actually gets started once you run the app with Node. All right, so here for us, it's the page function that returns for us a big HTML. For this one, I did a small one. You see it's just h1 tag, right? So it will just say hello Next.js like it did for us with 3. And this is how it works, right? So this is how it would look like if we ran just hello Next.js, right? This is page.tsx. Now, a little bit on Tailwind. I'm going to show you just one thing that is exciting right off the bat. What if I change my theme? Let's see. You see what happens? It adapts the styles automatically to your theme, which is really cool and usually requires a lot of work if you're doing plain HTML and things like that, right? So if I go back, again, adapts, and you see it even changed that little blue color there, not very visible on this projector, but there's like a strong blue little blob there, and it even changed that color. How did it do this? Tailwind. We don't have to do anything for it. It just did it all for us. It comes out of the box. We have this little file here called globals.css. Don't be scared. It's like your normal, CSS just with a little bit of tweaks. So we have the body, we have the color, and we have the background, right? So this is actually a gradient. Again, does not show on this projector, but if I change this background to, let's say, something more like white, like does not depend on the theme, does not depend on anything, it's gonna argue with me because I didn't close the tag. And now it's just all white, you see? Kind of ugly, I know, because it still thinks that we're in a dark theme. So this is just white. And you see, I change stuff here, it applies automatically. Why does it apply automatically? Because we specified it where in the layout.tsx. It's this little thing here. Again, pre-generated for you, don't have to do anything. So globals.css, why is it useful? Why is Tailwind so cool? A lot of reasons, we're not going to cover it today, but I just wanted to demonstrate this particular theming thing. Now, you saw that I defined it as white, or you can just do the, hex code, FFFFFFF, or 0000 onwards, or whatever you want. But here we're using these little variables, right? And you can do this in CSS too, it's pretty easy. But Tailwind is really great at automatically assigning them for the classes and also to be used in the Node in the Next.js application. I'm going to show you later how. You see, we defined this foreground RGB, background start, background end. This was for the gradient that we're using, right? But most importantly, this foreground RGB, for example, you see how it's 000, which means black, I believe, yes, because it's a foreground. So root is for the light theme, right? It's 000. So it would be like 000 in hex 2, 6 zeros. And foreground in prefers color theme dark, when it's a dark mode, is reversed. So it's white. So 255, 255, 255, right? So it's very simple to just define it like this, and literally it's going to choose automatically. See, we're using it for color here. Color means the color of your text, for example, right? Anything that's on the foreground, we're just defining this variable, and we use foreground RGB. Now, why is this cool for our application, right? Except for it changing styles dynamically, which is kind of cool, right? It's also important because we have our file that I looked at briefly in Tailwind config ts. This is, by the way, the last config that we have to deal with. This is very simple. it has content, which we don't care about because this is just defining all of the possible like files that it can apply the styles to. Doesn't matter, right? What interests us here is extend. And extend, you see we have this background image, gradient conic, and stuff like that. Now we can also add up to it. Like we can say, for example, colors. It's gonna tell you what to do, but here. So like colors, like this. And then you can like predefine things. You see, it's Copilot is recommending. But you see this little variable here, right? That is coming from this globals file. So if I wanted to use foreground RGB and say, I don't know, color, let's define some new color like border, right? I want the border to change. And I'll just put this as variable in here. And we're going to do that in the quiz app. And now, whenever I want to use border, it's going to use that one. I know it's a little tricky because it goes here, then it goes into the file. But like whenever I want to use border anywhere here, like color border, for example, whenever I need a color, for example, this one, border gray, like if I just say border here, hopefully it should scream at me. Doesn't like me. Okay, fine. Probably something I mistyped. Could be something I missed that. Anyways, we're gonna see another example of this, probably because it's RGB and I didn't do RGB here. Yeah, most definitely. Okay, yeah, because you see this RGB here, probably I needed to do RGB. And then inside of it, variable, and then inside of it this, because we need to convert. No, it still doesn't like me. Okay, fine. It's okay, we're gonna talk about this in the quiz one. But essentially what you do here is you define the color, and then you can use this color that you define here, whatever it is, border, border color, border CL. You can use this in your TSX file. Very useful. We're gonna use it in the next step. Again, here we're just going through the basics, right? So Tailwind, very useful. Study it if you want. This is comes out of the box, so it's pretty nice, right? This is me showing you the home page that we just looked at. And the last thing I want to talk about before we go into our adventure with the quiz app is the state, right? State management is very important for every single framework. Everyone handles usually differently. Everyone builds their own perfect state management tool, but we all start with use state, right? React has hooks that are actually one of the best, I would say, inventions. Like it's definitely better than some, like the older ones. Hooks are very cool because you can just define the variable, you define the setter, you define a default value, and you're good to go. Like look at this very simple code example, right? We can code this right now. I just don't want to spend time on it. If you want to do it like copy it right now, you can do that too. So you see this import use state from React, right? We already have React, so we already have use state that comes with it. We have our same homepage here that we have a bunch of HTML code right now, but we can also define anything here. Like if it's a function, right? It's JS, treat it as JS, TypeScript in our case, right? So you can define variables, you can define functions inside of it, anything that you can use in the code. Very easy, right? So, for example, we define here likes and set likes. Now, it looks like an array, it doesn't matter, just, nice notation. Likes is your original variable that you will be using in the UI, and set likes is your setter. So whenever you call set likes is a function. Whenever you call set likes, it updates the likes value. Now, what does it do on handle click? You see we have a button there. That's, by the way, pure HTML, nothing special here, except for us passing that likes. As you can see, likes, and we have like a little bracket there, which means we're passing a variable, right? The curly braces. So on click, we run handle click. Handle click, what does it do? It set likes. So it actually increments the likes number by 1, right? So we get the likes number if it's like 0 initially, plus 1 whenever we click. So, and here you can see the output of this is likes. Whenever you press on the button with text likes, it's going to increment, increment, increment. Very simple state management, very good to get started with. Yeah, it's perfect. Like there's nothing else you can do with this. And also notice this little use client, little foreshadowing for the next part. Use client is just defined as a string there. Like it's literally just, we can put it here, like use client, just page TSX, like use client. Why do we do this? Why do we need this? No one knows. We'll find out soon. But use client is a very important notation. So we can now actually move to the quiz app since we don't have much time left. But I just wanted you to go through this very important procedure of using Vercel finally, right? So Vercel is the company that manages Next.js. It's a very big company, very popular. They advertise heavily nowadays. Why? Because they actually, if you know Firebase, this is kind of similar, just a little more web app oriented and like not everything oriented. So here's my dashboard on Vercel. I already have an account. And I will ask you kindly if you could just Google Vercel like this, right? Just go here and open the first link, and they're going to show you some nice stuff here. For me, they don't show, but I'm going to log out just to show how it's going to look for you. It's going to be like this, right? Vercel, they're probably going to show you this beautiful triangle they have here, the pyramid, whatever, right? And then you can just sign up. Just, I'm going to ask you to sign up and choose the plan called Hobby because it's free. Your name, continue, and then sign in with GitHub. Since we're going to be using GitHub, you see they have the email option, but like GitHub is just easier. If you have your GitHub account with you, just sign in with GitHub. I'm going to log in because I already did it. So I'm going to log in with my GitHub. It already knows me. Yeah, and it's just going to pull everything from your GitHub, all the projects that it can deploy. It's probably not going to be anything right off the bat, but I already have the quiz app that we're going to be deploying today, right? So what I want you to do next is, first of all, do the sign up process. I'm going to wait for it for a little bit. But after that, we're going to use the code that we built for you to explore for this quiz app, and I want you to deploy it yourself. So I want you to have your own database. I want you to have your own little domain that you can show to your friends and family, and you can experiment with that app as much as you want. How are we going to do this? Very easy. We're going to use GitHub Forks, right? So we have this asudsc.com/nextjs link. Now that's our website /nextjs. Let's click on it. Let me sure that I'm actually not streaming my, yeah, I'm still streaming code. Okay. So Next.js here, it forwards you to GitHub, right? This is the little app that we built for you. You can see the same layout, so nothing scary here yet. You can either copy this to run locally. Don't do that. Just fork it, right? There's a little button called fork here. Very useful. Now, fork is used on GitHub if you want to change the source, like of the open source project. For example, you found a bug. Either you submit a PR and you create your own branch. Sometimes they don't allow you to create branches. So if you just want to have a copy of that, or like maybe you're scared that they're gonna change it to be like private or something, or archive it, or just sell it to somebody. Fork it, have it on your GitHub. You can change anything about it. They're never gonna see it, so no pressure from anybody. If you just want to play around with it, very easy. Let's press on it, fork, right? And I'm gonna create a new fork here. I'm gonna call it my Next.js, right? You can call it whatever you want. Now it's essentially creating a repository for you, right? And it's going to look the same. It's going to run a little job. And then once we're done with it, it's going to give me my own repository that's going to have the same code, but you see now it belongs to me as my profile picture on it. So it just says that it's forked, right? It's the same thing. Now, whatever we change here does not reflect the original repository in no way. So you can do this whatever you want. We're never going to see it. Now, why is this great? Because now it knows, and Vercel will know, that you have this new project. How will it know? Because it's connected to your GitHub. So once you have something new on your GitHub, we can add that project. Let me add a project here to the overview. Let's see what we have here. Where is my Next.js? So this is a different account. I'm just gonna switch to my account, hopefully. Switch Git provider. Let me connect like this. I don't want it to be ASU. I want it to be my GitHub account. Oh yeah, it might ask you actually to install Vercel. That's also fine. Like if you have this window here, just press on your since I have a lot of teams that I'm part of on GitHub, it's all cluttered. But essentially, we want to install Vercel for your GitHub. It's like very easy, just authenticate it, give it access to either all repositories or just the one that you made just now. It's like my Next.js, this one. Yeah, just gonna ask you for permissions, blah blah blah. Just install it, use it, whatever it's asking you to use. Yes, first of all, you can have my fingerprint. Yes, nice. Okay, so that's it. It's just gonna install it so it can see your project, and you see we have it here. So my Next.js created 2 minutes ago. Beautiful. We can import it now. Now, what does it mean for us? It means that we can deploy it, right? So again, if you have any problems with this so far, if you have any problems with GitHub account, anything, raise your hand. We're gonna help. And again, don't forget you can do everything at home. We're gonna record this and you'll have the slides. So if you want to do this at home, no pressure right now. But this is a very good thing to know. right? So I'm gonna import this. I'm gonna call it whatever, just everything is default here, no brainer. It's gonna deploy it. Now what is it gonna do? It's gonna copy the code that I just showed you on this link when we started, right? This one. You see it's Next.js to linky Vercel.app. Next.js is the name of the repository, by the way. So it just gave me a little domain name and I can use it, right? This is what I've been hosting from our GitHub that you just forked from. Now, since you just forked from it, it's yours now, and you can have your own domain and your own deployment of this application. It's going to take a little bit because it's building Next.js, it's running all of the code for you, installing dependencies, it's linting even checking your code structure and everything. It does everything for you. You can see like here what they're doing exactly. It's called CI/CD, right? This is automated deployment. So whenever you push to that GitHub, whenever you make a commit, it's going to build it for you, which is amazing, honestly, because so much better than just doing it manually. And congratulations, we have it available. And what do we have here? We do have our app. And the only problem here is that this is never going to load because you don't have the database, right? Because I did have a database in my project and you don't have it. So even if you create a new one, it's going to pop up like you have the UI, but it's not going to work because it's not connected to any database. Now we're going to speed run this a little bit because we have like around 10 minutes left. But again, this is all available in the slides and you'll be able to do it on your own. What we're going to do now is I'm going to showcase you how to connect this to your project, right? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go to, let's say, new window. Actually, I'm going to go just here if I have a new window. Fine, I'm going to open a new one. So I'm going to open a new window and I'm going to pull a repository. I'm going to clone it, right? I'm going to clone it from GitHub. Again, you can use any ID of your choice. I already have this one, my Next.js, which I forked. You will have yours. I'll put it in the documents, and you will have, I'll open this in the same window, and you will have, I'm going to switch now to the code, so you can see on the video. Now, you will now have this version of our app, right, that is now fully, macOS, please. Please. Thank you. You'll have this version of our app that we built that is fully yours, that you can change, that you can commit to, that you can alter in any way, that is also currently deployed. It just doesn't have the database, right? Why? Because we didn't configure it, right? So this app looks exactly the same as the one we just tested, right? It has the app folder, it has the source folder. Now it has a bunch of different things here, right? We have layout, we have page. Notice how layout looks exactly the same. Nothing changed. Now you see this is red because we didn't run npm install, npm install, or npm I. It's going to install the dependencies for you in node module, so it's going to light up, not light up red anymore, right? So notice how this layout is the same. So we're using the same stuff that would tell the browser to load. Page is a little different, right? We have some stuff going on here, but you can recognize this loading, available quizzes, and the button that creates a new quiz that is right here that goes into the create router. And essentially what it does is loads the page, right? So we're using the router here, and we're going to the create page. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to do the backend stuff because we are running out of time a little bit here, so I don't want to rush it. But I will tell you a little bit about at least the project structure so you can explore it on your own. Again, I'm going to link all of this in the Discord, and I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go through this. I don't want you to sit here for 2 hours. I want to, but you have lives. So I just want you to kind of guide you through it so you don't get lost when you do this. But this is very interesting, and this is something that will definitely be useful for your own projects, right? So first of all, read the documentation for Next.js. Second of all, explore Vercel. And third of all, let me just show you around in this project because it kind of uses a lot of things, right? So we are currently not fetching anything from the backend. Now, why do we have this API fetch quizzes here? Like, are we calling some backend? We don't have backend here, right? And this is the last thing I wanted to tell you about Next that is very exciting. So Next has its own backend for front end, essentially. So we're not calling anything here that is called API fetch quizzes. We don't have that. What we are calling is this little API folder here that has a folder called fetch quizzes. Again, this is how the structure works, like API/fetch quizzes, and then route. Route is like page, it's like the name of your route, right? Which is default. So here we have a function called get, and get is the method like HTTPS method, like we had in the API workshop, right? The get, you can post, you can do whatever you want. So whenever you say fetch, API/fetch quizzes is going to get into get. If you say method equals post, it's going to try to get post, but we don't have anything post defined. If I define another function called post here like this, it will call post, right? So we're calling get, and here we're running the SQL query, right? Again, this is on your own for you to explore. But again, by the way, very simple index. Like this is a whole database query that you're just running without even connecting to anything. Like you see, there is no pool, there is no credentials, there is nothing. Vercel manages everything for you. They will literally have everything in dependencies for you ready to go. Now, this is called, if you remember, I said foreshadowing. This is the server side. You have the client-side application, so use client, and you have use server. Now, the thing is, Next.js, very important thing to remember, Next.js by default is backend oriented. So it thinks that it's a backend. It thinks that this is not providing to the client, but providing to the quote unquote server, right? So something that will provide you with data, not the user UI output, right? So this by default, I don't need to say use server here, like this, use server. I don't need to say this because it's by default like that. If I wanted to use anything from this file, like SQL or like the next response, whatever I can call that is like backend logic, whatever you think of a backend logic, you can't call it from any other file. Like this file, page.tsx, no way it's going to call it. If you define it as use client, it is use client. If I remove this use client, half of the stuff is going to break because we're using notation here, like quizzes.map, which maps the quizzes to show that list of quizzes that we were going through, right? The buttons, everything is going to die because it thinks that it's a server at that point, right? So it's a clear distinction between server and client. A little confusing, but why is this good is that you're not going to mess your logic like up with client and backend, whatever, like passing back and forth. Just think of it as you have a client and you have a backend where you get the data from. As you can see here, I'm calling this fetch. And all I'm doing is just setting quizzes with, by the way, the same use state as we were talking about before with likes. I'm just setting the quizzes to be whatever we fetch from the database. Like, don't care about anything else. You see how clean this is, right? We just fetch, it's like our backend. Like, we just fetch it. We don't care what's there, we just know that it returns quizzes. What is happening here? None of our concern. Best part is your client, once it's deployed, it's not going to see this. All of your APIs keys are not going to be exposed. Like even if I call any method here that is going to use process.env, anything like this, it's going to say nothing is there. There's no environment, there are no variables, no API keys, even though I do have a big file that is not here because it didn't generate it for you, but I do have it in my other one because it's a, it's a git ignore file, so you don't get API keys. But it's like I have, even if I had a big env file with all of my keys, which Vercel does generate for you, it's not going to show up. It's all server side. So this is a very important thing to understand about it, and I think it's very good, right? So there's a bunch of more things to explore here, like that I decided to include because it's useful. Like for example, you see this quiz. This is the quiz page. Again, this is going to take 5 minutes. Sorry for keeping it so long. Again, you have all the slides here. You have the quiz page, right? Create new. This is the quiz. Create new page. Where is this? Can we find it here? macOS, please be normal. Thank you. It's create here, right? It's literally the same notation. Notice this. You have API, and then you have this. Like this is your index, right? Page.tsx is always index. Index HTML. Your /route. Nothing is there, right? If you want to go /create, like we use the router for, remember /create on button click? /create is literally gonna go into create. Like it's that simple. It's the folder structure. It's the same as like any backend, right? So you go literally go into /create. What do we have here? Same layout. Like layout is literally the same. If you wanted to have some nav bar here, you can put it here. Doesn't matter. For us, it's like the same, right? You can even ignore this layout. You don't need it here. It's fine if you delete it. Just have page.tsx because this is your index, right? Page.tsx, this is exactly the screen for the quiz creation, which is right here, right? Or, for example, let's go back to the deployed version, and here we have the quizzes. Now, once we start the quiz, how do I know which quiz to go to, right? Because it fetches some data. You see this link? Quiz/6. 6 is the ID of the quiz. You can all get it from the slides. If you go here, how do we find it? Okay, we have create. We know what create does. API, backend stuff, right? Quiz/ID. You see those little square brackets of ID? This is a defined variable. This can be 6, can be 10, can be 20. What is it going to do? It's going to fetch that and pass it into the page. Again, not going to go through this. You see this param ID. This is what it passes. Based on that, I am fetching it from the API. Again, the logic is very simple. It's just, it's a lot of code. It's kind of hard to get into it. But if you have the time, this is a very good example for this, right? So everything is possible. What you do on a basis with like the web applications is possible here, and even more. And once you connect Vercel with the database, which is, by the way, again, super, super simple. Like you just literally, you see this dashboard that you have once it's deployed, you go into storage, and you can literally create a database like this. Just create database, you select Postgres, and it's telling me that I don't have the money for it. That's beautiful. Okay, I connected the other, oh, I don't want to connect this database to this one. Okay, I'm just going to show you the other project real quick here. Next.js, storage. This is my database that I created. And notice all of the, I'm going to show you all of my API keys now. No, kidding. You wish. My one project that is an unpaid hobby plan. What are you gonna do with it, I wonder? You can pay for it. I'll find out. But yeah, you see we have a little bit of storage here, a little bit of compute time, which is crazy. Like that just give you 60 hours of running time. Again, Vercel, they want money. Everyone wants money. But the good thing about this is look how easy it is to get something from the table. Like quizzes. I know that you probably didn't take your SQL course, just ChatGPT that thing. It's easy. Like quizzes, all of the defined quizzes. Questions, all of the defined questions. That's my favorite FDFD there. Where's my FDFD there? DFDFDFDF. Nice. So they're all here. And if you want to clear anything, like select all from quizzes, you can do it right here. In here. Like you don't need any MySQL workspace. You don't need anything. Like it's so simple. You just go here. You want to insert something, you go here again, right? So, and they even show you, let's see, block here, like they show you how to connect from anything, right? So our example, for example, is here, right? The select from, you saw the same thing with quizzes. Again, it's very simple. They have very good documentation, and you have the slides here that show you exactly how to do this. Like create a database, add the DB to the app, run the project locally, deploy the project, and have it on your cloud. By the way, it got deployed, so if you did the same thing, you'll have your own My Next.js or whatever Vercel app that you already have. So remember that GitHub repository is yours. Your fork you can do anything with it, right? You want to change colors, you want to experiment with styles, everything you can do there, right? So it's up to you what you want to do with it. I encourage you to try the database because it's very simple. It's in the slides. It's going to be on Discord, and yeah, just have fun with it because it's a very cool framework. So that's pretty much it. Thanks. Sorry for keeping you a little longer. If you have any questions, I'm here, and there's pizza, and there's Arnav.
So one
Over here.
announcement. So we have a quick quiz, and since we got some swag from Google, winner kind of gets to choose between a beanie and a tote bag, and after the winners just collect the swag, everyone can just pick up whatever is remaining. So